Good evening, councillors and members of the public. Before we commence the meeting, I would like to draw your attention to the fire regulations, which are on the screen behind me. And also, please, can you ensure that your mobile phones are switched to silent? The minutes of the meeting, which took place on the 14th of January, have been laid on the table for the last 30 minutes. Are you content that I sign these as a correct record of that meeting? Have there been any apologies for absence, Fiona?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've had apologies from Councillor Brian Ellis, Councillors Patricia Ellis and Councillors Richard Gates, Michael Goodridge, Diane James, Stuart Stennett and Brett Vorley. Thank you.
At this point, I think it might be prudent just to mention that Brian Ellis, our chairman, is not well, and so I'm sure this committee wishes him a speedy recovery. Have any members declared interest before the meeting?
None received, Chairman.
Do members have any other non-pecuniary or disclosable pecuniary interests to declare? Okay. Have there been any questions received from members of the public?
None, Chairman.
Do we have any relevant updates to government guidance or legislation since the last meeting, Elizabeth?
None, thank you, Chairman.
Now we come to the number 6 on the agenda, quarterly enforcement report. Beth, could you introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on the performance of the Planning Enforcement Service for the quarter October to December last year. If I take you straight to page 7, where the Eastern Area site-specific updates start. Just one update further on the Eastern Area sites, and that's for Lydia Park. You'll note that a report had been drafted. It has now been agreed and closed, and as such it'll be removed from this list in future. If I then move to page 11, you'll note that our cases on hand have risen by 5, so we're still comfortably below that 250 cases on hand figure. And similarly on page 12 we are still comfortably well above the local performance indicator, which is to action 70% of our cases within a 12-week time period. And then lastly, if I then take you to page 14, of particular interest to this committee will be the appeal decision for land at Eastview Cottages. You may recall that this was an appeal against an enforcement notice for the siting of a mobile home for residential purposes. There was an enforcement appeal and a concurrent planning application appeal. The inspector resolved to refuse planning permission and allowed in part the enforcement notice. The element that was allowed was just to provide them further time to comply with the requirements of the notice. And it's worth noting that this isn't the same as granting planning permission. This site will not be lawful all the time this notice is in effect. However, as another update, the appellants have appealed against the inspector's decision. They've appealed to the High Court, and the hearing is scheduled to take place on the 27th of March of this year. Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I'm slightly unclear about Lydia Park. What exactly is going to happen now as you are taking into account recent appeal decisions? What's the next step on this?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Councillor Holder, thank you. With this particular case, we analysed the breach and we considered that given the period of time that this breach had persisted for, it wasn't expedient to pursue, and it would not succeed. We would not succeed in taking it any further. So we made that decision to close it. That said, I mean, obviously, the latest appeal decisions will be critical in determining whether or not to take forward other enforcement cases. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. In respect of Eastview Cottages and the extended period for compliance, is that running or is that on hold until the outcome of the High Court action has taken place?
Thank you, Chairman. No, that's on hold at the moment.
So the 18-month period will run if the High Court action again supports the inspector. Then the 18-month period starts then.
All being well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Forzewski.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say a very big thank you to Beth. I know that you've had to deal with some very difficult and awkward cases, particularly in my ward, and I thought you've done it very, very well indeed. And it hasn't been easy, and we often don't thank our officers enough for some of the work they undertake on the enforcement team, and I know just how hard you've worked. So I just wanted to bring that attention to the members of this committee, and I thank you very much.
It's well done.
Are there any other questions, members? So the recommendation is set out on the first page of the agenda that the enforcement report be noted. Are we agreed? Agreed. Now we come to the quarterly appeals report. Barry, could you introduce the report for us, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So first on page 15, we have two appeals that were rolled up and heard together at Chapel Fields, Loxford Road, Allfold. These were refused both under delegated powers. The first one was for the erection of 23 dwellings, the second for the erection of 33 dwellings outside of the settlement in Allfold. The main issues here were being the effect of the proposal on the character and appearance of the surrounding area, including conservation area and neighbouring listed buildings. The inspector agreed with the local authority that the scheme did pose problems or have an effect on a significant adverse effect on the character and appearance of the surrounding area. The inspector did say that both schemes had some positives in as much as they provided affordable homes and market homes, but notwithstanding, the inspector decided there would be that adverse impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding area, also on the conservation area, and dismissed both appeals. Next, page 16, we have an appeal at Cranley Hotel, the Common, Cranley. This was a refusal under delegated powers. The application being for the erection of 5 dwellings following the demolition of the existing storage building. The main issues here were the effect of the proposed development on the character and appearance of the area, including the setting of the nearby Cranley Conservation Area, and the impact on the living conditions of future occupiers and existing occupiers. The existing occupiers are number 2 Laundry Cottages. The inspector agreed that it would be highly visible from the conservation area, and it would seriously harm that conservation area, character and appearance thereof, and would also not provide for a good standard of accommodation for the future occupiers of Block A and for the existing occupiers of number 2 Laundry Cottages. That appeal, again, was dismissed. Next was an appeal at land at Smithbrook Kilns, Cranley, an application refused under delegated powers for the outline application for 25 dwellings with all matters reserved except for access and layout. The main issues here were whether the proposal was inappropriate development in the green belt, the issue of housing supply in the borough, the issue of loss of employment land, contamination on site, biodiversity, satisfactory living conditions for future occupiers, the failure of the applicant to provide for infrastructure needs, and the effect the development would have on highway conditions. The inspector decided that the proposal would be in appropriate development, as it would have a greater impact on openness than what was there. He said that whilst the proposed 2-storey residential block would reflect the scale and height of the commercial buildings, the terrace with enclosed gardens would create an urban feel. With regards to the loss of employment land, he said, whilst not entirely conclusive, the evidence suggests that there would be some loss. However, he didn't give that significant weight. That being that there was an existing permission on that site for some employment buildings, some employment uses. He agreed with the authority that the proposal would not secure any benefit in terms of the need for affordable housing, and that was the reason, again, to weigh against the application, and that the proposal would not provide for adequate infrastructure. Overall, the inspector decided that any positives did not cumulatively or individually outweigh the negatives so as to amount to very special circumstances, and he dismissed the appeal. Next, we have an appeal at land adjacent to Eastview Cottages, Dunsfold Road, Allfold. This is one that Beth's already alluded to. This was refused under delegated powers for the change of use of land for the stationing of caravans for residential purposes for one travel pitch, together with the formation of additional hardstanding and erection of a utility day room ancillary to that use. The main impacts here were the effect on the character and appearance of the surrounding area, the need for the proposed development, and the personal circumstances of the appellant. Well, the inspector decided that the proposal had detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area, and that detrimental impact was not outweighed by the need for the proposed development nor the personal circumstances of the applicant. As Beth's alluded to, this is subject to the High Court challenge on the following grounds: failure to take into account the best interests of the child and taking into account additional information at the inquiry which the appellants consider shouldn't have been taken into account. That appeal was dismissed in line with our decision. Next, we have an application at Brookhurst Grange, Holmbury Road, Ewhurst. This was refused under delegated powers. This was for the erection of a barn to provide agricultural and hay storage together with stabling. Now, the main issues here are whether the proposal was inappropriate development and the impact on the AONB and AGLV. The inspector decided that the barn itself had two uses. Half of it was for agricultural purposes, half of it was for the stabling of race horses, in effect. The inspector came to the conclusion that only half of the barn needed to be used for agricultural purposes for it to fall within the definition of agricultural use for the purposes of Greenbelt in the MPPF, and therefore decided that it wasn't inappropriate development. That's not a decision that we necessarily support. And the inspector also decided that given the barn was for agricultural use, and given that there was a permission on site for an agricultural barn already, that it didn't have that detrimental impact on the HLV or AONB. That appeal was allowed. So that's a 5-1 in favour of the authority. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Barry. Are there any questions, members? So the recommendation is set out on the first page of the agenda that the appeals report be noted. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Now, number 8 on the agenda, applications for planning permission. No one has called for a visit to any of the application sites in advance of the meeting, but in the event of site inspections being necessary, as a result of our consideration of the applications at this meeting, these will be held on Monday the 9th of March 2015 at a time to be agreed. So we now move on to the planning applications. The first application on page 21 of the notes is WA 2014-1518, erection of 2 detached dwellings and associated works, including formation of new access following demolition of existing building, follows invalid application WA 2014-1070 at land adjoining Byway Cottage, Dunsfold Road, Oldfold, GU6 8LB. Barry, would you like to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is erection of 2 detached dwellings and associated works, including the formation of a new access following the demolition of the existing building. The application site is located just at the Allfold Crossways, opposite a site that members dealt with maybe some months ago, an old mobile garage that's been turned into 4 dwellings. Here we have an aerial photograph of the site showing the site, and then we have some photographs of the existing workshops which are on the application site currently, and here we have a photograph of one of the interiors of the workshops. Then we have some photographs from Allfold Road looking over the hedge. Now, the application is for the erection of 2 dwellings and associated works, 2 4-bed dwellings, each 9 metres wide, 7.7 metres deep, both on generous plots, one of 987 square metres, plot 1, and plot 2 on 505 square metres. So here we have the site plan showing the 2 plots. This, as indicated on the screen in front, is plot 2, and this is plot 1, this area being included in the garden space of plot 1. Each of the dwellings is proposed to be 4 bed and would provide for 2 car parking spaces each. Here we have a proposed street scene showing that the proposed dwellings are of the Surrey vernacular with tile hanging, clay roofs, not too dissimilar to what we see further down the street scene. Here we have a great detail of cottage 1, which is a 4-bedroom dwelling. This is plot 1, and the garden extends slightly off the screen, as you can see in front of you. And here we have plot 2 on a slightly smaller plot of 500 square metres. If I take you to the determining issues, matters of technical judgment, if we go to housing land supply, as members will know, the authority doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply, and that is a consideration of significant weight. Next, loss of commercial land. As you saw in the photographs, the buildings themselves aren't of a great state of repair, but with regards to the use of the land, that's been advertised for a significant period of time, 3.5 years. That's been assessed by our valuations team, and they're happy that the site is no longer required for an employment use. With regards to highway issues, our friends at the County Highway Authority have assessed the scheme and don't have any issue with regards to capacity or safety. Drainage and sewerage, the parish council have raised concerns about capacity in the drainage sewerage network to accommodate the development. However, Thames Water have been consulted and don't raise any capacity issues themselves, so they're happy that there is sufficient capacity. Now on to those matters of judgment. Impact on the countryside beyond the green belt. Members will be aware, paragraph 17 of the framework tells us that we are to respect the character and appearance, the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside, and to recognise the role it plays in planning. This site is currently previously developed land. It's not of an intrinsic character and beauty which makes the area its beautiful self, and therefore officers consider that its impact on the countryside beyond the green belt is acceptable. With regards to visual amenity, the proposed site itself doesn't add very much to the visual amenity of Allfold, and the proposal would result in a significant uplift of that site through the delivery of 2 4-bed dwellings of the Surrey vernacular. Impact on residential amenity. Both properties are located significantly far away from neighbouring dwellings, so as not to cause any overbearing, overlooking or loss of privacy. And then the parish council comments. As I said, they relate to the capacity in the sewerage network, but these concerns aren't borne out by the Thames Water undertaker. The parish council also raised concerns that they would prefer to have seen a pair of semi-detached properties similar to what's next on site. However, officers consider that what's in front of members is acceptable in and of itself. I do have one update, which is a revision to condition 11, and this also picks up on one of the concerns of the parish council in relation to that elongated garden space of plot 1. They have concerns that it may be taken away in the future and used for another purpose. However, condition 11 says that the land to the east of cottage 1, as delineated on the submitted plans, shall not be used other than for purposes of residential garden, ancillary to the use of the cottage as a single dwelling and for no other purposes. So the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions on pages 37 to 39 of the main agenda, and to the revision to condition 11 on the verbal update. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Barry. Members, over to you. Councillor Forzewski.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, officers, for this report. I think it's very comprehensive. This is a straightforward, common sense application. I think the officers are absolutely spot on in their recommendation. I agree with some of the comments from the parish council, but also I agree with the comments from Barry there with regards to what is suitable for this site. It's a brownfield site, and we did a few months ago look at the disused garage area, which we put 4 houses in there, so it fits in nicely in that area. So I, subject to anything else my colleagues have to say, I fully endorse your recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Band.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I agree with all what Councillor Forzewski has said. I mean, it's a sensible site for redevelopment of housing. It's clearly, the evidence shows that it has no commercial use at the moment, and it can do nothing but tidy it up. I just am a little concerned about the issue with Thames Water, of the known problems in Allfold with sewage. I'm not sure what we can do about it because they've given a fairly unequivocal comment that it's okay. But there clearly has been a problem with sewage in Orfold. I know it's not exactly here, it's in Clappers Meadow, it's a bit further round. But I think it's something we need to somehow think how we challenge the information we're getting from Thames when there is a known problem in the area. I'm not sure I've got any positive suggestions as to what we can do in terms of conditioning it at the moment. But because, you know, what Thames have said, but I mean, we know there are problems with sewage in our borough, and you know, I can see in local people raising objections to housing unnecessarily if their existing sewage problems aren't satisfactorily resolved. I've got no real positive contribution to make to it. I don't know whether our officers have got any idea of what we could do, but it is a real issue, I think, in parts of Orfold, which we need to be conscious of.
Thank you, Chairman. No, it is a real issue, and the sewage undertakers are playing an active role in the local plan process and identifying to officers where there's infrastructural needs, and they will eventually lead into our community infrastructure levy 123 list. So they will be on there if future developments will end up paying for the infrastructural needs with regards to sewerage.
Thank you, Barry. Are there any other questions, members? So, the recommendation is that permission be granted subject to conditions 1 to 30 set out on pages 37 to 40 and informatives 1 to 5 on page 40 of the agenda. May I have those in favour of the recommendation to grant permission?
That's agreed, Chairman. Thank you. Permission granted.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, members. Permission is granted. And now we move on to the next application, item B2, WA 2014-2206, erection of a single-storey extension following demolition of existing garage as amended by letter and plans dated 14th of January 2015 at 24 Blackheath Grove, Wonersh, GU5 OPU. Barry, would you like to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So the application is for the erection of a single-storey extension following the demolition of existing garage at 24 Blackheath Grove, Blackheath. Here we have an aerial photograph showing the plan. The site is off Blackheath Lane, off the King's Road. It's quite a way to come from the King's Road, in Wonersh Common. Here we have a photograph of the site. You'll see the existing... My mouse doesn't see... Oh, here we are. There we are. The existing single-storey garage, which is to be demolished and replaced with this single-storey structure, flat roof with a lantern finish. Here we have the existing plans showing this existing garage to be demolished. Here we have the proposed elevations of the single-storey flat roof structure with a conservatory-style lantern providing light into that area. The proposal is roughly 2.9 metres in height, 3.5 metres at the front, extending to 5 metres at the rear, keeping a distance from the boundary of between 1 and 1.5 metres. What we have now in front of us is examples of similar extensions which are not too far away from the site, both in Blackheath Grove, 2 single-storey side extensions, and then again on the other side of Blackheath Grove. Now, looking at determining issues, there's no technical judgment here, it's all matters of judgment. Looking first at impact on Greenbelt and policy RD1, whilst the site is in the Greenbelt, it is in a village settlement and it is substantially surrounded by dwellings, or buildings rather, and therefore would not be inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Next, looking at design and impact on the visual amenity and impact on the AGLV. Well, officers acknowledge that a flat roof extension isn't desirable in an area which is predominantly pitched roofed. However, given the examples I've shown, this is not an uncommon feature. It is set back from the main road, and officers consider that on balance it would be acceptable. Next, impact on residential amenity. This proposal is to replace an existing single-storey garage in a very similar location, keeping a significant distance, or a reasonable distance away from the boundary of between 1 and 1.5 metres, and officers therefore conclude it wouldn't have a detrimental impact on the residential amenities of neighbouring properties. So next, take you to the recommendation, that is, recommend to grant planning permission subject to conditions on pages 49 to 50 on the main agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Members, over to you. Councillor Band.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I have to say I agree with the officers on their recommendation in this respect. I have to say I don't agree with the Parish Council's objection. When you actually look, as the photographs show, of other developments in the area and the extent to which this house is particularly set back on a corner, I really think the impact on the street scene is going to be absolutely minimal. So I think whereas it may be ideally we might wish for sort of pitched roofs and things, the reality is in this area, as Barry has already said, is there are a lot of flat roof little extensions like this, and the way this is particularly tucked away around the corner I think is entirely acceptable, so I would support the officer's recommendation in this case.
Councillor Byam.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, just adding to the points that Councillor Mann made, if we look to that photograph again, the adjoining house, of course, has an extension which doesn't show on the location plan. That forward extension of the garage, I don't think appears on that location plan, and it gives a very, very tight access down the side, and that has been seen to be acceptable. Much worse than the proposed site, which is set well back and leaves space alongside. So I don't see any reason why we shouldn't grant planning permission.
Thank you, members. Any last questions? So we move on to the recommendation, which is that permission be granted subject to conditions 1 to 3 set out on page 49 and the informative on page 50 of the agenda. May I have those in favour of the recommendation to grant permission?
It's all in favour.
Thank you. Members' permission is granted. So now, sorry, Barry.
William has just popped back to his desk to get a piece of paper for the next application. I suppose we could just wait for one moment while he gets back. Sorry to be a pain.
Talk amongst yourselves, members.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I haven't introduced it yet.
Sorry.
So get your breath. Moving on to the last application, item B3, WA 2014-1952, change of use from joinery B1C to 2 dwellings C3, together with alterations, extensions, associated parking and landscaping following the demolition of the existing outbuildings and part demolition of the joinery building as amended by letter dated the 2nd of December 2014 and plans received on the 2nd of December 2014 at Hydestyle Joinery, Hambledon Road, Hydestyle, GU8 4DE. William, would you like to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman, and I do apologise for the lateness of entry into the committee. Okay. This is the application site in question. It is Hydeside Joinery, which is situated towards the southeast of Hambledon Road. So the this is the site in question, and I should just point out to members that there is an error in the red line around the application site. It should actually be shown as on this plan here as actually indenting ground number 1 and 2, the Ashes, which is the adjoining neighbouring property. Okay, so this is elevations showing existing plans of the building, of the joinery building. The site is currently in B1C use class, and as you can see, the building is situated here with associated outbuildings and storage buildings situated in the corner of the site, along with hard surfacing situated here. The proposal is for the conversion of the existing joinery building into 2 separate residential dwellings, one with 2 bedrooms, which is this property here, and one with 3 bedrooms, which is this property situated on the other side. The proposal would involve a number of external alterations, including the erection of 2 front porches on the front of the building, the erection of a small single-storey side extension on this elevation here, on the eastern elevation, and similarly and also an extension, a single-storey side extension on the western elevation here, on the side elevation. The external alterations would involve the insertion of roof lights, both on the front and rear elevations of the property, and also a number of high-level windows on the rear elevation here, on the back of the building. I should actually include as well that the proposal would actually include the insertion of a mezzanine floor level, which is shown here, which will include storage space within the roof space of the building. The proposal has been revised following initial concerns by the County Hire Authority. There was initial concerns about the access and turning arrangements within the site, so following amended plans, a new turning bay was created in the southeastern corner of the site, which is here, along with parking spaces situated in the corner of the site here, 3 spaces here, and 2 spaces for the other property here. As well as that, proposal would include hard and soft landscaping towards the front of the building, to create a small sort of front amenity space for both properties, and obviously the proposed the existing outbuildings here on the side would be demolished in order to allow for the new parking bays and the landscaping. These are pictures of the application site itself. I hope you can see this okay. There wasn't very good weather conditions on the day in question, but this is the joinery building as it currently exists. And I should mention that the building is currently vacant at the moment. This is a picture on the side of the site showing the existing hard surfacing, an existing shed on the site, landscaping on the side, and the existing access into and out of the site. And this is the neighbouring property here of number 1 and 2, the Ashes. These are just the pictures of the existing outbuildings, which, as I say, are proposed to be demolished. The existing joinery building, and also this is the kind of single-storey outshot, which is all proposed to be demolished, and the new single-storey side extension would be created here. And this is just a view looking towards the rear of the site as well. And similarly, again, a view looking into the front access into the site with the existing access and hard surfacing which is situated on the side. In terms of determining issues, the principle of development is within the green belt, so the issues are whether there is compliance with policy RD7 and the reuse of agriculture buildings. The building is considered to accord with that particular policy. The alterations to the building are minor in size and scale, so there's and also the extensions as well. So there's very little impact on the O&B in the AGLV. Amenity space is sufficient for both properties. Waste storage has also been provided, and due to the extent of the alterations and proposed extensions, the impact on neighbour amenity would be minimal. The planning history of the site has long been used for a joinery business, but has lain vacant for the best part of about a year. So marketing has been provided to show that there is no commercial interest in the site. And as I say, parking highway considerations, as I say, parking is compliant with the council's guidelines for both properties in this particular location. And as I say, access has been, turning arrangements have been satisfactorily provided within the site. And planning infrastructure contributions are no longer needed following recent government changes. So there's no longer a requirement needed for the proposal. I should just refer members to the planning update sheet. There was concern from neighbouring properties with regards to impact on one of the public sewers adjacent to the site. Thames Water have raised no objection with regards to sewage infrastructure capacity. There's no objection raised by Thames Water with regards to water infrastructure capacity, and also I think they've recommended an informative with regards to surface water drainage. And as such, there are no amendments to any conditions or formatives as part of the proposal. I would, however, just refer members' attention to, I think it's planning condition number 12, I think it's page 75 of the agenda, which had initially set out that bin storage be provided in accordance with the details submitted, but I think there was concern raised about bin storage being close to one of the bedroom windows, which is actually, if I just show you back on the plans, I think bin storage is proposed to be incorporated both for this property, I think towards this corner of the site, so in here for this property, and similarly bin storage will be provided for this property close to the bedroom window, which is this window here. So in terms of ensuring there would be no sort of negative impact, if you like, on the living conditions of that bedroom, we have actually recommended a revised condition, which is that details be submitted in terms of proposed bin storage within the site, and this should be submitted to and agreed in writing by the local planning authority before any works commence on site. So as such, the recommendation to be put forward is that subject to conditions 1 to 11 are set out on pages 72 to 75, and informatives 1 to 7 are set out on pages 75 to 76, and subject to the revised wording of condition 12, which is on page 75 of the agenda, that permission be granted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, William. And I'd like to thank you very much for those wonderful pictures of high-style joinery by moonlight. It's very interesting. So, members, over to you. Sorry, Councillor, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Chairman. You stole my thunder, actually. I was thinking that we regularly given photographs which are pretty poorly intelligible. This wins the prize for the year. It's early on in the year. I'm sure it might be surpassed, but this must be the worst set of photographs. I couldn't work out at the beginning what the hell we were looking at. I still really can't, but you did describe it, William, so you gave us some information. And the same goes for the drawings, which not only on this one, but on many other drawings, they're very, very weak lines, and therefore we have difficulty in seeing them. Or is it just the projector or whatever that we were seeing here? But overall, I have no objections to it, but I think those comments ought to be taken on board somewhere so we can improve our presentation.
Thank you. Chairman, if I could just respond to that. I do apologise, that's not particularly helpful. Hopefully you will find them to be unusual in that we wouldn't normally present a photograph of that quality, but I think in the circumstances that was probably best endeavours. But we take your point entirely, Councillor Byam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Councillor Holder.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I visited this site when the Hyde Star joinery was in operation, and I did note that it was a very damp site. It's sited right at the bottom of Hyde Star Hill, and the water pours off the hill. On top of that, across the other side of the road, of course, is the Tuesday Farm, with all their polytunnels and deep drains and things, and that water also pours into the drains alongside Hambleton Road. And I noticed that there is an update sheet, which I haven't got in front of me, which did note a report by Thames Water on the impact of this development on the sewage and drainage system, but I would like to see something perhaps in the conditions that says that this development should go ahead in accordance with the requirements of Thames Water, that this fulfills all their requirements, because I think the additional water from both the rainfall, which results in huge ponds on the Hyde Star crossroads most of the year, it isn't a very dry site, and I'd like to see something included that perhaps took this into account. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you for that. Officers, can we offer some suggestions?
Thank you, Chairman. A condition could be added for requesting details of drainage to be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority, and the scheme to be carried out in accordance with the drainage details. So we could certainly include such a condition. Thank you.
So can you just say how we're going to word that again in about 3 words, if you don't mind?
So if you're minded to accept, we can go away and write it up properly, but it would be for a drainage scheme to be submitted in writing and for the development to be carried out in accordance with that drainage scheme.
Right, so the recommendation... Oh, no, we've got... Oh, sorry, Councillor Byam. I do apologise, Councillor Byam.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'm quite happy to accept the officers' recommendations and support this additional clause, and I'd be quite happy for the officers to finalise the drafting of it, the exact drafting of it. I'm sure they get it right. But I'd just like to support what Councillor Byam said in respect of the quality of the drawings which were submitted in this report. It is almost impossible to see exactly what is being proposed. And it's exactly the same on the website, unfortunately. So it is really difficult to actually get a good view as to what is happening here. Perhaps this is not a particularly controversial application, but if we see these sort of drawings on applications which are controversial, it makes it very difficult for members to take a real view as to what is going on. I have to say I saw more from going to Google Maps to see what I saw about this site than either the photographs or the drawings in this case. But I still support the officer's recommendation.
Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to come back on that, do fully appreciate the point that's being made. I suppose, and certainly as I said before in respect of Councillor Byam's comment, certainly accept the concern about the quality of the photographs, which is within our gift to try and visit if we can on a day where the light is better in the circumstances the timing was probably frustrating and that the light quality was poor. In relation to the drawings, we're in a more challenging position because we have to accept as valid an application if it is drawn to scale and ticks all the boxes in terms of the requirement. But sometimes, notwithstanding that, the quality of the drawings is such that when they are reproduced, scanned onto the website, and indeed scanned into the officer's reports, the quality diminishes and it's reproduced again on the screen. So we do what we can in that sense, but ideally we'd be able to throw back to applicants' drawings which don't reproduce well, but that isn't really possible for us. All we can do is accept the drawings if in their form as submitted, that they are legible and they can be scaled from, and they do tick the validation boxes. But we are working constantly with agents to try and improve the quality of submission, so we should bring that thought to our agents forums in the future, bearing in mind your comments. Thank you very much.
Councillor Band.
I don't know anything we as councillors can do to help in that respect, because it really, I think, is the point that if we're being asked to make a judgment, you know, they themselves are doing themselves a disservice by not giving us information on which to make that judgment. I mean, you know, some of the information, some of the drawings, particularly on page 54, for example, you can barely see a line, let alone anything else. I know this is an extreme example, but I would worry about this if it was a really controversial application. We really would be in a difficult position to actually make a judgment.
Thank you. I second that. That's a very good point, isn't it? Councillor Forzewski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank goodness I didn't have my glasses on this evening, because I thought page 54 looked quite okay because I didn't have my glasses. Sorry, I shouldn't be so facetious. It's more of an observation than anything else, and I think Councillor Band so eloquently put it when we talked about the application for Allfold earlier this evening, when we talked about sewerage, drainage and flooding. They are real issues and there are no answers. And, you know, I mean, I just think it's something we need to be very mindful of as how we can go forward and the cumulative effect. And as I said, there is no answer. It gets really, really frustrating, but it's something we've all got to think about. And I think Councillor Holder was quite right to bring it up as well. It's an observation more than anything else, but I do think we've got to look forward to how we can deal with it in the future. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Are there any more questions? So the recommendation is that permission be granted subject to conditions 1 to 11 and an added revised condition number 12 regarding the bins, and an added condition number 13 to include a drainage scheme. Are we agreed on that? So may I have those in favour of the recommendation to grant permission?
That's all in favour.
Permission is granted. Okay. I think that there are no items. Number 9, exclusion of press and public. There are no items to consider in exempt session. So that, members, concludes the meeting this evening. Thank you very much.